I remember the first day somebody pointed out my hair loss, and it was actually my best friend. We were in the physio room. I was on scholarship in America, football, soccer, whatever you want to call it. I spent 2 years in Daytona Beach and 2 years in Wichita Falls, Texas. And in my very first month, let's say, couple of weeks of being on scholarship in Texas, I was in the physio room and I got a video on Snapchat from my best friend. I was confused because he was across the room. So I opened it, and that's exactly when my hair loss journey started. That exact moment. Why? Because the night before we were at an alumni party. Okay, and at this alumni party, the Americans take their initiation traditions to a whole new level. Okay, whether you're joining a frat, whether you're new to the school, doesn't really matter. There's an initiation. And our initiation for this program was that the alumni, so the players that used to play for the college, come back and they shave the heads of the newer players that play in the college. Me being one of the newer players, I was a junior transfer in, and if you say no, you not only get your head shaved when you're asleep on the bus, but potentially your eyebrows and your beard as well. Now, I don't look too good without a beard, so I was thinking, yeah, I wouldn't mind keeping my eyebrows and my beard, so I said I'd do it. To this point, I've always had like a high hairline, you know. I've never been one with a straight hairline. I've always had kind of higher corners, but it was never really receding. It was always maintained when I was younger to that point, which was 2018. So we're at this party. There's people on the roof, there's people in the backyard, there's people in the house. I'd say there's 500, 600, 700 people there, maybe more. And all the new players are getting their head shaved. So I'm like ninth to get a cut. Now bear in mind, we have one razor. Okay, and these people are just taking turns shaving heads, to shave mad designs in, really crazy. And I'm the ninth person to sit down. So like a good sport, some of you might know where this is going, I wore my Brazilian jersey. Okay, I had a nice top on, right, looking good, jeans, whatnot, but underneath I had my Brazilian jersey. So when I took my hoodie off, and knowing damn well when the person who was shaving my head saw the Brazil jersey, exactly what style they were going to do. That's what I was going for. So he shaved the Ronaldo haircut into my head. So those of you who don't know Ronaldo, he won, I think it was World Cup year, he got his head shaved and only left that part of his hair left. So I did it, enjoyed the party. This is my first impression meeting some other students and other athletes and whatnot, and this is what it was looking like going around the party. Great night, absolutely great. So I shaved my head the next morning, very hungover, shaved my head because I couldn't go to college with looking like Ronaldo. I'm sure you can understand that. So I was bald, which was completely fine. I was happy with how my head shape was. I was happy with how it turned out. I was like, okay, maybe I don't look too bad bald. Not my preference, but let's do it. So a couple of days go by, maybe a week, maybe less, and my hair starts to grow back. Fast forward to now, I'm sitting in this physio room. I open up this Snapchat from my friend, and my head is down and I'm on my phone, and all you can see is the dark hair. It's all dark, but then there's two patches at the front left and front right of my head, and they're kind of blondish. So it looks, yeah, I got some names as to what it looks like. I'm sure you can guess, but I went into a complete state of shock, a complete state of denial, because I was thinking, wow, they really messed me up. That razor must have been so hot that they singed my hair. Oh, it's growing back. It's just slower to do so. He cut it wrong, all of this stuff. And deep down, I was thinking, please don't be. Like, come on. I didn't really look into hair loss too much. I had uncles that are bald, not fully bald, they've got hair on the back and sides, like I'm sure most of you have that uncle. And I didn't think too much of it until weeks and months started to go by where my hair was thinning in them spots. And even years went by, maybe 2 years went by, where I blamed the guy who cut my hair, and I blamed the piping hot razor, and I blamed this, that, and the other. But the truth of it is, and my main purpose behind this video is, if I just accepted my hair loss earlier, I could have combated it earlier. And that's something that I recommend for all of you. Don't go into a state of denial if you notice your first signs of hair loss. Take action immediately, whether that be through medical therapy, whether that be through organic substances, whether that be just something as simple as changing your shower filter, your diet, reducing your stress. There's so many different causes of hair loss, but ultimately combat it as soon as possible. Why? Because for those of you who don't know how hair loss actually works, male hormone called DHT attacks your follicles, okay? Nobody understands why, but DHT attacks your hair follicles. What happens then is your hair thins. It becomes weaker, it thins, and sooner or later it falls out. And when it starts to grow back, it's actually too thin, too fragile, and too weak to break your skin's surface, therefore leading to patches. Or baldness. Ultimately, the sooner that you can combat this and reduce the DHT that's attacking your hair follicles, the longer you're going to preserve that hair for, right? So I went into a state of shock, state of denial, and for 2 years I just lived with it. What is live with it? I suffered with it. I was wearing hats all of the time. I was checking the weather every time I woke up in the morning. Was it windy? Was it raining? When I was playing sports, I was thinking, oh God, I'm going to sweat here now and it's just going to reveal itself. And that was the worst time when my hair got wet. I was living in America where there's really good weather and they've got swimming pools and whatnot, and people were going to the beach and all this stuff on spring break in Florida. And I was just thinking to myself, like, this is just going to reveal my biggest insecurity. So luckily enough, I have a lot of confidence in myself to just embrace it and keep pushing through. But it got to a stage in 2020 where it was my breaking point. I couldn't take it anymore. I had just in recent months signed my first professional contract in Germany, and I was everywhere. I was on social media, on the club social media, that is, my announcement for my birthdays. There was posts going up about me, and I never put that stuff on my own page because it was always an action shot of me playing football. And what happens when you play football? You sweat. What happens when you sweat? Your hair gets wet, it kind of sticks together and it reveals it, especially in the sunlight. And I didn't want to show that on my social media. So I got to a breaking point. I said, right, fuck this, I'm shaving my hair. So I did. I shaved all my hair off and I was bald again for the second time. Now, this was probably the second best decision I've made in terms of my hair, and I'll get to the best decision. That was the second best decision I made in terms of my hair, and I tell people to do it a lot. If they're suffering with hair loss, I tell people all the time, you should shave your head, right? It will help you understand, like, one, do you have the head shape to pull off a bald look? Does it look well? Some people don't. Honestly, they don't, and they know that themselves when they shave their head bald. But other people love it. Okay, and they might want to maintain their bald head for the rest of their lives, who knows. Secondly, it helps you overcome any insecurities. You're walking around, man, with a bald head, you know what I mean? What's a bit of thinning or a bit of receding going to do next? You know what I mean? You're going to be way less self-conscious when that hair grows back of your thinning or your receding because you've rocked the bald head. And lastly, and it kind of ties into my final point, it's that it frees you up of all insecurities. Like, there is no more you can do shaving off your hair, right? There is no more you can do. Like, there is no more hair on your head, so there's nothing to be worried about, okay? All you have to do is face the fear and go out in public, and even at that, man, people accept it. People will give you compliments, and it's way more freeing. I guess you could then ask me, another point I will say about having a bald head is that it allows for you to use stuff like derma rolling and minoxidil and really access the scalp. Your scalp is really accessible, and any other oils that you might want to use. Your scalp is really accessible when your hair is at its, lowest surface level, being your bald head and the skin on your head. So you can really get treatment to the areas that need it, which can be really good. Because if I try and derma roll on the inside of my, let's call it the middle part of my hair right now, and I try and add minoxidil, the reason that it doesn't really work to a full effect is because I'm not getting the minoxidil all the way to the scalp, and the derma roll is not touching the scalp as well in certain areas because I have to try and get it down in there. So ultimately, I guess you can ask the question, why don't I have a bald head anymore? I was posting my bald head in my social media and whatnot. Let's put it this way. It took a lot of brain power and mental capacity to have thinning and receding hair. It filled up a big mental block. It was a big insecurity for me. But when I transitioned and I had a bald head, it took a lot of maintenance, okay? Because if I didn't keep up with that every 2, 3, 4 days and shave my head again, my hair would start to grow back. And the hair that's DHT resistant on the back and sides, and my stronger hairs that were on top at that time, were growing back at a faster rate and very dark. So my receding hairline and my thin hair would reveal itself every 3 days if I didn't stay on top of it. And that to me was just too much maintenance. So the main factor in all of this is using treatments like medical therapy such as finasteride, minoxidil, using gadgets like derma rolling, taking biotin tablets, using salt palmetto and caffeine topicals for your hairs and shampoo for your hair, shampoo for your hair, and so forth. And the biggest factor in all that is you have to be consistent with it. You have to be consistently at it for 6 months or longer to see any effect. And my biggest issue was, not only was it kind of tedious to have a bald head and continuously shave it every 3 to 4 days, but it was also really tedious for me to be staying on top of medication or staying on top of these treatments. And like minoxidil you have to do when you wake up in the morning, and before you go to bed. You have to take a finasteride tablet every single day. You have to derma roll once a week, or whichever way you turn to do it. There's different I won't get into that right now, but there's different millimeter derma rolls and other stuff like the shampoo, and you have to stay on top of it in order to see any bit of success. You can't just go on and off, on and off, on and off. So what I told myself was I always was interested in getting a hair transplant. Now, I put off getting a hair transplant for 4 years after I shaved my head bald. So I shaved my head bald, I had it completely bald for a year, then I let it grow back, and I kind of just lived with my insecurities while I was seeking out what clinic was best for hair transplant. Ultimately, I spent so long messaging back and forth with these clinics. I spent so long flicking through these ads, getting them bombarded with ads on social media, texting back and forth, trying to find out what was a good price. And I essentially decided to get a hair transplant because I found somebody on the internet that had a hair transplant before, and I've just messaging them back and forth. So kind of finding a mentor helped push me over the edge in order to pick a clinic and actually go ahead and do it. Now, my thought process behind getting a hair transplant was, if I got a hair transplant and I invested that money, I would then become consistent with my medical therapy and with the other organic methods because I have stake in the game. And essentially that's what happened. That's what led me to have this hair right now. I need to get a haircut, 110%. I just trimmed these up by myself, so no comments about. I'm in that middle phase. Do I grow my hair long? Do I not? If I cut it now, then I don't have the brain capacity to grow it back and wait all that time again. So I'm in that middle of ground. Do I let it grow or not? That's besides the point. Getting a hair transplant was the best decision I've ever made, and it kind of forced me to start using medical therapy, which is essentially what I wanted to do. Now, if I hadn't found that mentor in himself that had a hair transplant before, I would have made a terrible decision, and it was a decision that I was going to make anyway. I was going to get a cheap hair transplant. Please don't ever do that. I was going to get a hair transplant. I think it was roughly like 900 euros, everything included. Now, that's a red flag in itself. And to this day, having visited over 15 clinics, talking with some of the top doctors in the world, I know how bad that could have turned out. My thought process was, if I had just gone ahead with it and it didn't turn out well, being that I didn't like how it was growing back or anything like that, at least I would have a hairline and I would just shave my head bald again. You get me? But what I didn't realize, and I didn't do my research into, is that I could be left with significant scarring on the back and sides of my head. I could be left with bumps on the top of my head. I could be left with triple grafts being put in places that they shouldn't be put into. And essentially, I decided to go with a clinic that done one person per day. And the hair transplant industry is a business in itself. There is clinics out there that take 5, 10, 15 patients a day because they see everybody as a dollar sign. And that's not the trap that I wanted to fall into, but almost did. Essentially, now what has happened to me is that I've been through countless different experiences with my hair, and I've lived through them all, and I always get questions from people as to what to do when you face X or what to do when this happens. So I've always answered people's questions because I've always been open and honest about my hair loss and my journey in itself. So I wanted to start posting on YouTube, and essentially this first video is to introduce you to me, my hair loss journey, and my path going forward. And my path going forward is to educate every single one of you on the type of treatments you can be using in order to treat your hair loss. But I don't want to be like all these other gurus and these, don't get me started on these stupid companies coming up with this shampoo and that shampoo and this works wonders and that works wonders. I'll get into that in later videos. But essentially, the biggest factor is I want you to take action. I waited so long before taking action, and if I had taken action sooner and I wasn't in denial, then I could have preserved a lot of my older hairs that have now fallen out. You know, I am still battling hair loss. I've got a hair transplant. I'm on the medication. Have I been consistent with it? Not so much. Now I have post-hair transplant. Even directly post-hair transplant, I wasn't consistent with it. But I started to face hair loss again, roughly around 9 months after my hair transplant, maybe pushing on the year. I'm a year and 1 month now, post-hair transplant. It was the best decision I've ever made. And I highly recommend it for all, but you have to do your research. You have to find a mentor. You have to understand what you're getting yourself into, and it will be the best decision you've ever made. But trust me, from someone who's been there, who's done that, who's made the mistakes, just educate yourself. I hope I can be of assistance to you. I hope anyone can be of assistance to you. But let's start taking action when we first see our hair loss, and let's educate ourselves on what's right from wrong and go from there. So with that being said, thank you very much for watching my first video here on YouTube. I hope This video and all of the rest can encourage you to take action, take the leap. Even if it's just shaving your head, even if it's getting a hair transplant, even if it's changing your shower filter or using organic treatments or hopping on some medication, if it's going to solve your insecurity or at least better your mental health, and I help you to do so, then that's a win for me. I wish you all the best, and my DMs are open at all time. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.